Alright guys, I wound up having to cut into this bad boy, or impact, because I dropped it into some sand and it was spewing sparks and all kinds of other nasty shit, so I wound up cutting her open. Well, not really cutting it, obviously I just took it apart, but I had to open her up and I was hoping to be able to get it clean. And while I was at it, I figured I'd take a look at its internals and see how well it seems to be made. First thing I noticed when I took the clamshell apart was that, as you can see, there's some of this machining grease here. I don't know exactly what kind of grease that is. It doesn't look like lithium grease to me, so that sucks because that's what I have. I don't have this kind of specialty grease that they use. So I just try to keep it intact. It doesn't look like the grease actually infiltrated into the mechanism itself, so that's cool. It's some sort of a really slick kind of machining grease, but as you can see, there doesn't appear to be any kind of a real seal here. When I took the halves off, this front portion just pops off. I'm not going to take it off again because getting the hammer mechanism and all that to line back up to slide it back on was a pain in the ass, but just take my word for it. There's this very thin realm of grease in here that maybe it got really hot, I guess, and it just started to spew out, but there's no gasket here to keep that from happening. It just, as you can see, I wiped it down a little bit, but there was a lot of it on here. It came out right here as well, and here's the whole actual heart of the impact itself. One thing I liked immediately when I opened this was the rear bearing is actually housed inside of steel instead of just being inside of the plastic back of the tool, which is pretty common. The bearing itself is actually inside of this. It's a very small bearing, though, as you can see, but I imagine the drive shaft through this tiny thing must not be very small, or be very large. The bad thing that I don't like is that it appears that this housing plate here that contains the brushes and everything that I would probably want to be able to get into and service, and in this case clean, this plate is just pushed in and then they staked it over. So you can't actually take this thing apart and service it, because every so often they've got these portions where this section here has had a flathead put to it and staked down so that this plate can't come off. And as you can see, there's the brush holders. There's 1 and 2, and right here is where the electronics come in to actually, power the unit. There's the fan, which is obviously a bi-directional fan. It's not directional. It just goes both ways. And besides that, we also have the fact that these brushes do not seem to be, with the current setup, it doesn't seem like it's possible for me to change these brushes out. I've only had this impact for, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 months, maybe, and that's probably guessing on the high note. And you can see that a good amount of that brush is already gone, and there was a lot of carbon buildup on the outside here, so it was pretty dirty. They're probably soft brushes, which is a good thing, but if you look inside here, if I can get that thing to come on focus, there's the spring right there that actually pushes on the back of the brush. It's a very chintzy little clock spring style little rod that's just been twisted around. I don't really like that style very much, but as you can see, the actual brush holder is actually, it appears to be brass. I can't really tell what metal it is exactly, but it is metal. I've taken apart the wall tools before and found the brush holders were actually plastic, but my only other downside to this is that it doesn't look like the brush comes out. It's solid at the top there. You can see toward me that there is a solid piece there, and that is the side where the actual wiring that goes into the brush comes in. So there's no ability for you to pull this brush straight out because there's a rim here, or there's not on the other side. So they had the option of not doing that, but they did. So basically what I'm seeing is this thing is not designed to be serviceable. It's basically a throwaway model once the brush wears out, unless you send it in to get it serviced, and with somebody that would be able to reassemble everything correctly and all that. You basically, if you didn't make this thing and you don't know how exactly it went together, the odds that you'll be able to pull it apart without ruining it are not good. So that's pretty shitty on their part to make this thing not serviceable, because it's not cheap. It's not as expensive as a DeWalt or, you know, Bosch, Milwaukee, all that. The tool itself, anyway, comes with a battery and a charger for like 75 bucks, something like that. And the batteries are really cheap, which is what drew me to it, because I was like, shit, you know, I go through batteries pretty often because, you know, I run them down all the time, and lithium-ion you really can't do that with. But, you know, when you're on a job site that has no fucking power, you don't really have a choice. You use up every last bit of juice you've got, and then I guess the day's done. So here I am now trying to clean this thing out, and I can't even take this stupid housing apart. But I guess we'll move on to good things. The switch has always been very positive. I haven't seen any breakage of any kind, and it does seem to be a pretty sturdy design. As you can see, it's actually all metal, where the tire meets the road, that whole thing. It looks like this portion here, which is the selector for reverse, safety, and or I guess you call it neutral, and forward, that's actually a metal. And here is a very sizable little piece of plastic, and it's a straight push right around where your finger would be. So the odds of you snapping this isn't really that great. And this is a variable speed trigger, so there's MOSFETs and whatnot in this to, you know, control the voltage. And this bad boy is the heatsink. It's actually a pretty nice one too. So there's good news there. You can see the information here. It's apparently Javel. I can't even read that. That looks weird to me. Some kind of stamped marking, and then on focus, you piece of shit. Come on. I'm gonna have to back up a little bit. Come on. Oh, whatever. If that means anything to anybody, cool. I'm trying to turn this thing around so you can get a good look at it. Yeah. All the points have been soldered, so that's another plus. You know, I've seen those spade connectors. I fucking hate those things. Never work the way the engineers say they do. Here's where the brain of the thing is. And that all looks pretty skookum from my angle. I actually started saying that because of Bolter. He's the whole reason I even do these now. Because that guy really makes me feel like an idiot with how smart he is and how well he can take these things apart. He could probably tell you all the really important shit about this, but the fact that it's been siliconized here, I imagine it's supposed to make it some sort of water resistant, so any water incursion on this end won't bleed through into the actual heart of the board. But, so, that's actually pretty neat that they went to that little detail. And everything in here fits together pretty well, and the shell's really nice. There's some markings here. I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but I figured I'd show you while I had the thing open. And there's another mark here. MLPA6. Glass fiber 30. Wow. Alright. 30% glass fiber filled. Nylon reinforced. Or whatever, reinforced, filled. They're different people that say different things, but that's actually really good. The 30% fiber reinforced like that is basically all DeWalt's and all the major company power tools are all made that way, so that's actually a really good plastic. So that's cool. One thing that really pisses me off is I actually really like this thing. This thing's really strong. My DeWalt actually got beat out by this thing, and I'm not, you know, I'm not making any money on this or anything. Nobody's gave me this. I bought this with my own money, but I found that this thing outperformed the DeWalt in how fast it was able to run in fasteners and whatnot into pressure-treated lumber. And I really digged the lighting setup here. How you got the 3 lights. That's really cool. And very, very bright. And you don't have to depress the trigger all the way in order to turn those on. So sometimes when I'm like walking around trying to find my components and clean up the job site, I just squeeze the trigger just a little bit and the lights will turn on, and I just, you know, I can walk around and do what I gotta do. One of the things I don't like is this fucking chuck. I really hate how smooth this is, which at first I thought, oh, it's not going to bother me that you don't just push the bit in and then it's in, you know. No, you have to pull this out, put the bit in, and then release it, and then the bit stays, which is normal. That's the way they used to be. But this is slick, really, really slick. So if your hands are sweaty or dirty or whatever, it's actually, you find yourself slipping off of that a lot, and it gets fucking frustrating. So That I don't like. I was thinking I might just scuff this up to try and make it a little grippier. But yeah, so there you have it for that. Overall, given the fact that you can't service the brushes, I'm going to have to say that this is not pro grade of tool. It's just, if you have to restake things in order to service the tool, it's no longer worth whatever amount of money you save on batteries over time and all that. And it's not a professional grade tool anymore. It's basically a one and done, where it's set up so that hopefully in the life of the person using this thing, they'll never use it enough to wear these brushes all the way down. And since I've been as a pro and I've worn it down that much in less than 1 year, you're not looking at a whole lot of lifetime. I mean, the brush can only be as long as about here on the brush holder, I think, right about there. Down, you're making contact. And there's a stop where obviously the part that makes juice go into this isn't at the very end of the brush. It's further in. So you're not actually getting all that much life out of it anyway. So you probably, of the way that I'm using it right now, if I was using it that way constantly, I'd probably have maybe a year and a half, assuming something else didn't fail first. Which, given the fact that this is a really scrawny little bearing, and it's likely just shielded and not getting any grease, clearly, because there's no grease on this side. All the grease is on here, like inside of this housing. Then, yeah, you're looking at a set life of maybe a year, year and a half, which would explain why the fucking warranty on this thing is only 90 days. And yet they still went to the trouble of making the thing out of really nice fiber-filled nylon and overmolding it. I mean, you can actually see the keyways for the moldings on the side here, how they have those little juts on each end. That's so that the molding doesn't pull itself out. But as you can see, some of it already did. And this little bit right here, this little laser line that they made there, that came off pretty quick. This is starting to go here, but none of that really helps my gripping anyway. It's all this major portion right here where the crook of my hand between my thumb and my forefinger, that's where I'm really gripping the thing. And then under here, well, I mean, just squeeze the stupid thing. You're not slipping it from there. But, yeah, there you have it. I mean, I'm going to get this thing back together off camera because I'm probably going to might not make myself look like a freaking retard, but I am going to basically run this thing until it's absolutely dead, and then I'll see what Harbor Freight wants to do about that. Maybe if they don't take it back, I might try to bust it open and see if I can service it, or I don't know, make something of it, because it just seems like a waste of good components to make it unserviceable. But anyway, my final thoughts are, not a pro tool unless you're just getting started and you have no money for tools and you just need this. Then I guess sure, it'll last you about a year and a half of heavy use, and I mean heavy. I've beat the freaking crap out of this thing, so that's cool. But you're not gonna get the same kind of life out of it as if it was a serviceable tool. So mostly it's gonna be for homeowners who don't want to buy Ryobi, because it is stronger than the Ryobi Impact. I've done a head-to-head with them, and this one beat the shit out of it. So yeah, thanks guys.